Plant my snow peas right around Christmas time, because that way they can come up and grow, and just about the time we get past the danger of a hard freeze, they start blooming and producing. And now let me tell you, those things are very, very prolific. Guess what I do with my tomato cages when I don't have tomatoes in them? You can take this thing, you can put it out here, you can put it down there, you can plant about 6 or 8 snow peas, inside, and they just grow up and cover this thing. And I can go along, I can pick a bag this size of snow peas just about every day off of a cage this size. So I can tell you why they get away with charging $7 a pound for them, because the cheaper veggies that you get in the store, they're all mechanically picked. Tomatoes and things like that, they don't go along, or green beans, they don't go along and pick those things off. They have a machine that goes along and rips the whole plant up, takes the beans or the tomatoes or whatever else off of it, because it's cheaper to plant another plant than it is the labor it would take to pick these things. But with snow peas, no, they don't do that, so I guess that's probably why they're more expensive. But the thing that I want to tell you about growing beans or peas, they are very special plants. We refer to them as legumes, and they have the potential to form on their roots little nodules, little balls. Now they're not part of the root. Don't confuse them with the knot that a root knot nematode makes. It'll be like little BBs attached to the roots of your plants. These little nodules are filled with bacteria, which are able to take nitrogen from the air and turn it into fertilizer. You remember when you hear stories about our forefathers, how they always rotated, planting beans and corn, beans and corn, beans and corn. The beans would enrich the soil by virtue of these little nodules full of bacteria that harvested the nitrogen from the air and made fertilizer out of it. Corn can't do that. So they grow, a crop of beans and then a crop of corn, a crop of beans, crop of corn. Well, if you want to get the very best growth, you want these plants to make as many of these little nodules as possible, because they're sort of self-fertilized and they build the soil as they grow. Only our soils, for the most part, have been destroyed one way or another, and there are very few of these little nitrogen-fixing bacteria left in the soil. So what you do, if you're going to plant beans or peas into an area for the first time, you get a little bit of this product right here. It's called, this is, what do they call this? Nature's Aid. Sometimes it's called nitrogen, G-I-N. But what this is garden inoculant. And this is the bacteria that forms the little nodules on the roots of beans and peas. So the first time you plant beans or peas into an area, this stuff is as fine as dust. It's almost like graphite. What I do is I'll moisten, I'll put the seeds in a cup, let them soak for an hour or so, then I'll pour all the water off. I'll dust a little bit of this inoculant in there. They immediately turn gray-black, and then I'll go plant them. So I've inoculated the soil. I've got all these bacteria that it takes to, to make the things grow well. It's just call it garden inoculant. The nice thing about this is you only have to do it once. Once you have grown beans or peas in an area that you have inoculated the seed, there will be plenty of bacteria left in the soil from season to season, and you don't have to treat your seed again. However, if you grew snow peas over here this year, or last year, you want to grow them over here this year, you better treat the seed that it goes over here. And I'd like to say that, that's enough inoculant to plant an acre. So find a neighbor and share a little package of it. It says it keeps for a year. I keep it in the refrigerator. I think it really lasts about 3 years in the refrigerator. But beans and peas, whether it's warm weather or cool weather, very important to inoculate the seed, when you first plant into an area. Yes, ma'am.
Would you have to do that if you're starting a brand new raised bed garden with soil that you brought in?
Absolutely. But only for beans and peas. Those are the only things that have the capability of doing it. And once again, you only have to do it once.
Is how bluebonnets are formed?
Bluebonnets are lupins, but I think that they are using a different bacteria in the soil. It would be worth trying. I know it helps vetch. Whenever I plant vetch in a field, I always treat the seed. I know it helps. And a lot of people grow some of these legumes just to improve the soil. They never plan to harvest anything. Austrian winter peas, great cover crop to plant in the garden over the winter. Vetch, great thing to plant. The deer will eat it, which has been my problem up in the hill country. But any legume seems to benefit from it, so try it on your bluebonnets and let me know what the results are.
What about Super Thrive? Is that any good? Super Thrive?
Super Thrive is basically a combination of vitamins and vitamin B12 especially and some things like that. Super Thrive, to me it is kind of like a vitamin for plants. If you're eating a healthy diet, you probably don't need to take any supplements. You don't need to take vitamins. If your plants are healthy and growing well, you probably don't need Super Thrive. Won't necessarily make them grow any better, but it certainly won't hurt anything. And if your soils are really lousy, like most of our soils are, yeah, a little Super Thrive along with your fertilizer is certainly not a bad thing. Nothing harmful in it. Yes, ma'am.
Don't you roll sweet peas and...
Oh yeah, any bean or pea, right? Even if it's a flowering plant like a sweet pea, and a lot of people eat sweet peas. So yeah, that's a good question. Yes, ma'am.
I noticed that your dates are different than the fall plant dates they have on here.
Well,
Yours are a little later.
mine are a little later. Actually, it seems that our weather has been a little warmer. We did this probably 10 years ago, and we seem to be having cooler winters. And yes, I think I'm probably recommending most things about 2 weeks later than we did.
Except for the onions, which
Yeah.
you said December.
It's hard really to put down one date because in the hill country, you can do things a week or two earlier. You're south of town, you can do things a week or two later. You're all the way down in the valley, you do things a month later. So again, and I really kind of regret that we even put dates on here because you just can't garden by the calendar. You've got to garden by the weather. And we're going to narrow it down. We're going to say garlic. We're not going to say plant it October 10th. We're going to say plant it sometime in October. And so take the planting dates with a grain of salt. Now some people like to plant by moon signs. I love to tease people. Somebody calls me on the radio and says, should you plant by a full moon or by a new moon? I tell them plant by a full moon because it's a lot easier to see what you're doing. So, I don't know. Some people swear that it makes a big difference. Other people don't. My time is limited enough that I plant when I get time to work in the garden. Yes, ma'am.
Is there a certain variety of snow peas that you found that's better?
The old sugar snaps are hard to eat. The important thing to know is on your snow peas, some of them are bush peas, some of them are vining peas. I find that the vining ones produce far more than the bush types. Certainly. Other questions?
Bob,
Yes.
rotating vegetables, does that matter?
In an organic garden, I don't think it makes any difference at all.
Okay.
The only, and the two reasons that you would rotate, one is to take advantage of your legumes and the nutrients they put into the soil. We're maintaining healthy soil, so we don't really have to do that. Other people worry about disease organisms in the soil. In a chemical garden, yeah, you can build up some real serious diseases in a given area, and your next crop will do very poorly there. In an organic garden, we have very, very few diseases to worry about. Our bacteria and fungi in the soil are pretty much taking care of any of those problems before they ever get started. Yes, ma'am.
Are there certain seed companies that you recommend?
Boy, that's hard to say. I always would say, plant early enough that if the seed doesn't germinate, you can plant more. We carry we carry Seeds of Change, which is 100% organic seed. We carry Renee's seed, which is part of the same family, but she doesn't guarantee that her seed is organic. I have always had much better germination with Renee's seed than I have with Seeds of Change. But there's some things that we can get in one brand that we can't get in another. I have planted some of the others. I've planted some of the ball seed and some of that, and planted an entire package of seed and not had one single plant come up. So, experiment and find what works well for you. The varieties that I can find in Renee's seed, yes, those are the ones that I plant because I think it's the best seed company out there. But I've also had relatively good luck with Seeds of Change, or we wouldn't be carrying it. I think you will do pretty well if you buy bulk seed from national companies like Park Seed in Greenwood, South Carolina, Ball Seed. Typically they have good fresh seed, which does pretty well. But good question, but I can't give you a real firm answer on it. Yes, ma'am.
Is there a seed farm in Comfort? I've heard of
I don't know of one.
Wildflower seed.
There's Wildflower Seed
Yeah.
Farm outside of Fredericksburg,
Outside
Wild
Fredericksburg,
Seed Farms.
yeah.
And they grow wonderful wildflowers. We carry their seed, but I don't know of a vegetable seed producer. If you really get into this, and I envy you if you have the time to do it, there are some seed exchanges out there. Seed Savers Exchange.